David, Nassief, thank you for joining us on Serves You Right.
Great. Excited to be here with you, Andrew, today.
Yeah, so I thought it'd be good to start off kind of letting the audience know what it is you do and why were you interested in coming and talk to us today?
Well, basically, I had a pretty traumatic experience happen to me when I was 63. I had just got fired after 18 years with the same company, and it kind of evolved into something I never imagined would happen. And I just wanted to share it with people and give them hope and give them maybe the opportunity, if they're in a situation similar, as a powerful way out.
Sure. Yeah. So can you walk us through how did that end up happening? Was it
Sure.
kind of a no-fault thing or like...
No, I guess it was my fault. I got fired anyway, so whatever.
Oh, that's too bad.
But,
I was hoping it was just like downsizing, company closed.
I was fired, buddy. You're fired. What happened,
Okay.
I'll just give you the brief version of it if you like. I was 63, as I said. After 18 years with the same company, I just got fired totally unexpectedly. I wouldn't wish that day on anybody, Andrew. When I did the math, if we had drained all of our savings and all of our retirement, we were scheduled to be broke by 65. And at this point, I'm thinking, who is going to hire me at my age? But that wasn't even the hardest part. I tell you, the hardest part was driving home thinking, how am I going to tell my wife, Mary? We had been married for 30 years at that point, and she just didn't deserve the mess I just threw our whole life into. Yeah. But anyways, I after a couple months of dead-end job searching, and my heart wasn't in it. I just did not want to go back to the corporate world, but I didn't have an option. I mean, I had to keep a roof over my head and put food on the table, so I had to do it. So I'm sending out resumes. And the people I'm interviewing with are basically saying in a very polite way, no, the company that fired you, they did the right thing because you're of no value anymore to us either. So it was all right, that's wonderful. So I thought, okay, I need to do something different. So I decided to take a huge risk, and I went to work as an independent sales agent on straight commission. No salary, no safety net, no benefits. I tell you, those first months were absolutely brutal. Cold calls constantly, rejections all the time. I had more no's in that 2 months than I ever could imagine. But as I look back on that, Andrew, and I can reflect on it now, at the time it was pretty difficult, but I really believe all that resistance I was getting, all that rejection I was getting, was necessary to build the mental muscles I needed to punch through that dark period of my life. After 10 months of grinding, I had an incredible milestone. I was suddenly making more money than my good-paying corporate salary. And for a brief moment, I thought, we made it. But then I thought, no, we didn't make nothing because I'd been making good money for almost 40 years. And look where it got me, on the verge of financial collapse. So I said, I got to learn how to invest. I got to learn how to build wealth because I obviously failed at that miserably for 40 years. But I didn't want to waste time with a bunch of theories and people on commissions trying to make a commission off me. So I dug in myself. I read 21 books on personal finance, listened to 13 podcasts faithfully, read blogs, newsletters. Every time I got a good idea, Andrew, I put it on one piece of paper. Kept putting it on this one piece of paper. When it filled up, I said, I'm not going to go beyond this one piece of paper because I want to keep it simple. So I would take the worst idea off and put a better one on. I kept refining it until it was a set it and forget it approach. Because I couldn't fool with Wall Street. I was having a company to try to launch here. So anyways, after 6 years, at age 69, I did what I thought was impossible. From terrified of being broke to a 7-figure portfolio and real financial freedom. I now know it is never too late to rewrite your story, because if I can pull it off starting as late as 63, anybody can, I believe, in the right direction.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's quite a story. And, I share some echoes of it, not in the exact same times and frames,
Sure.
and I'm trying to remember, I believe I was 22, maybe 23. And so people that have listened to the show will know that, back in the day, there was a club right downtown Santa Fe that I'm from Santa Fe originally.
Oh.
And it was called Milagro. Great job. Kind of chaotic. A lot of big, exciting. You're young. You're making drinks, making a lot of money.
Yeah.
And long story short, from what I understand, they were not paying their taxes, I believe. So road trip with my mentor at the time and good friend Natalie Bovis. We were going to Arizona Cocktail Week, and we get a call that essentially they're changing the locks. And so it's like, well, we don't have to come back on a schedule now because neither of us have a job anymore. And, that threw my life into some chaos because, I always thought the gravy train would keep on. Like, that job was great for money. And, I worked 3 days a week and I made enough to support myself. And I was young and it was fun. And then all of a sudden I have nothing saved. I have no job. okay, and
Yeah.
it was a really rough time. It took years to rebuild to that, honestly.
Yeah. I believe it.
And I still remember to this day, like, after a couple of years working at this Italian place, finally I had this one shift where I was bartending and it was busy. My parents were in town. I still remember afterwards telling them how much I made, and they're like, "Whoa!" It's like, "Yeah, I'm good at this. I just lost my job. I just I can rebuild this at some point." But it does throw your life into chaos, doesn't it?
It really does. It really
Especially if you don't have anything saved up or not enough for a long
term.
Not
enough. Yeah. And picture this, you're 2 years away from being 65, which is when most people retire, and that was when you're going to be broke.
Yeah.
The stress there.
So before you kind of put together the system, did you have any system to speak of? Was it just not effective, or were you not following any kind of savings and retirement path?
I was really good at chasing shiny objects and hot tips. It's just like I thought I had a plan, and then, oh, look at that over there. And all of a sudden, and it's just like year after year, I never seemed to be getting ahead in my investments. And to be honest with you, I did a lot of procrastinating. Like, oh, this is kind of a tight year. I think we'll just wait till next year. And it kept getting put off. And then when I had a really, really good year, okay, we'll put some in, and then I didn't really know what I was doing and buying this and that and thought I knew what I was. See, here's the thing that a lot of people don't understand. I was making good money for most of those 40 years, okay? But when you make good money, a lot of times you think, okay, well, then I must be good with money. And that's not necessarily true. Just because you make good money doesn't mean you're good at building wealth and investing money. Those are very different skills. And I thought I had both, and I only actually had one.
Yeah. I mean, it is one of the best ways to go broke. It's reliable. Spend more than you make. And, the funny thing is it scales all the way up. So if you make 10 an hour, or if you make 10 million as a professional athlete, if you spend more than you make, you will go broke eventually.
You will, I promise.
Yes.
Exactly.
What would you say, because a lot of the people that do listen to the show are in that hospitality space, and hospitality is pretty notorious for, if you are on the front lines, if you are a tipped employee, for having ups and downs, unreliability. You have good nights, you have bad nights. Like, what would you say to someone with a variable income? How can they begin to build their wealth and really start tackling this problem?
Well, I have a variable income now, okay? I've had it ever since I started, so I understand what you're talking about. You can't just, when I was in the corporate world, I had a very set pay plus annual bonuses, but that's nice. But when you're doing what I'm doing now and what you're doing when you're straight commission, and you're technically on straight commission in a way, I guess, or so close to it, you don't know what next week's going to be or next month's going to be. I mean, you have an idea, but you don't know. So let me just share with you what I did, because it might help reflect some of the people understand.
Sure.
Once I started making good money again, okay, like I say, after about 10 months of grinding, I mean, there were some months in the beginning where I was making $200 for the month, and I was working way over 40 hours just trying to get the company going, and that's just part of the risk you play, but it paid off, after 10 months. But anyways, once I got things together, I ended up doubling my portfolio 3 times in a 6-year period. Now, a lot of people hear that and they go, Dave, that's not possible. The market didn't increase that much. You must have been either delusional or you're lying. Well, I'm neither. Let me explain how. I wasn't day trading. I wasn't chasing crypto, and I wasn't trying to time the market. I was actually doing the opposite of that. I was doing something so boring it would put you to sleep. And here's the crazy thing about it, Andrew. When the market was down, I was thrilled. When other people were panicking and selling, I was buying more shares at discount prices. My only regret was the market wasn't down more during that 6-year period, because I'd even done better than I did. But what surprised me most is the math. There's a thing called the rule of, and what it says is, if you are investing, say, getting a 10% return on your money will double every 7.2 years, or roughly every 86 months. Once I got my compass in place, my first double occurred just in 30 months. My second one, 13, the third one, 29, for an average of 24 months, way less than half the 86-month time period. But the secret wasn't the returns. I was doing 3 things, and this is going to get to the answer to your question about what do people do. The first, I was saving a percent off the top. So when the money hit my account every month, I pay myself once a month. When it hits my checking account, basically, I took a certain percentage off the top. So some people call it pay yourself first. There's a lot of different ways to approach it. But whatever percent, you can handle. You can be consistent about it. You can't say, well, I had a good month, so I'm going to take more, and I have a bad month, I'm going to do less. It's got to be like that consistent number, whatever you can afford in your budget. Second, so this is before I paid a single bill or spent a single penny. I mean, within an hour of hitting my account, it was literally over in a protected fund where I wouldn't touch it. The second thing is I got in the right kind of investments. And for me, it was low-cost index funds, okay? I only own two. That's how simple my portfolio is. The two I own is, one is the total U.S. market. I own literally every publicly traded stock in the United States. The second one is the international market. I own literally every publicly traded stock outside the United States. So, Andrew, I literally own every publicly traded stock on the planet. For me to go to zero to broke, the entire world economic system would have to collapse to nothing. And if that happens, we get bigger problems.
Yeah, all those true fears about AI would have to come true. And okay, well, there you go. We've all melted down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I can sleep pretty good at night knowing I'm that diversified. When I hear a company's going under, well, yeah, I do own a little piece of that company, but I own several thousand other companies, and so that one doesn't bother me. And you can do this really inexpensively. If you ever like a Robinhood account, you can literally start for $1. It's not like, I got to have hundreds or maybe thousands. No. I own a very little sliver of these companies. But the third thing I want to mention that I did that really helped a lot is I used market volatility to work for me instead of against me. Too many people, myself included for 40 years, they invest with their emotions, okay? And then when they're buying high and they're selling low, which is the exact opposite of what you want to do, which is what I did for 40 years. And what I did is instead I had, when the market was down, I was buying. When the market was up, I was buying. I was just buying no matter what. And that's some people have a hard time with because they don't understand. But here's the point. Think about this. If you went to the department store and they had a big 50% off sale, you wouldn't go up to the clerk and say, hey, I don't want no 50% off. I only pay full retail. When's that thing going back to retail? You'd be nuts. No one would do that. But they do it with the stock market every day, Andrew, because when the market tanks, oh my gosh, I got to get out. I got to get to cash because it's... No, that's when you want to keep buying. Everything's on sale. It's like, wow, why wouldn't you want to buy more at that point? For 200 years, every time the market has dropped, it is not only fully recovered, it is went on to new heights. So for me, 200 years of data, I'm pretty comfortable with that. I can sleep really good with that at night. So the bottom line is I was able to build my wealth twice as fast with half the risk compared to how I was doing it before, my crazy emotional way before. And that made all the difference. Sure. It really did in a big way.
No. And I like that because, I feel like the answer, a lot of the advice out there kind of goes for the sexy, like flashy, crypto trades and all the meme stocks and all this garbage. And the truth is, there's a reason that simple works for a lot of people. And I'm in my head, I'm thinking, there's that famous quote from Warren Buffett where it's diversification is a hedge against ignorance. But when I heard that, I didn't hear that as an insult to me. I heard that as like, okay, so if I'm going to willingly be ignorant about all sorts of things when it comes to the stock market, diversification will actually allow me to participate because I'm not ever going to be Warren Buffett. All he does, I guess I should say all he did because he has retired from Berkshire Hathaway. Yeah. All he did was sit around and read about stocks since he was like 5 years old. And kudos to him for having such an intense passion, but I don't have that passion. Exactly. I'm not going to beat him at that game. Let him beat that game. There's a reason he got to be one of the, wealthiest men in the world. Cool. Good for you. Yeah. I need something that I can set and forget,
Yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah.
You're making such an important point because let me tell you because I know a lot of people in the hospitality industry, your time is limited. I mean, you're almost like a self-employed person from what I've seen and heard anyways. My son used to be in that business and it was very demanding. And let me tell you how long it takes me to do my investments every month now. Literally 5 minutes. And here's what it does. The money hits my account. I immediately transfer a percentage of it, same percent every time, to my investment account. And then I only invest in those two funds I was telling you about, the total U.S. market and total international market. I click out, I'm done. 5 minutes, literally a month. So it's not time consuming and it's highly diversified. I'm not going to say it's, that it's, that you're not going to have a down year. But like I said, in my book, I love down year. I remember one year, I think it was 2022 was the down year. The market was down like 18% for that year. I kept pouring money into the market, pouring it in my two investments, okay? And every time I looked at my account, the balance was less, Andrew. It was less. I mean, I was pouring all this money. It was less. I remember telling my brother that. I says, I keep more money and it's less. I said, isn't that wonderful? And he goes, wait a minute, but did you say it's wonderful? Yeah, because I'm buying more shares for every dollar.
All right, sorry to interrupt. We will get right back to David and Andrew, but I wanted to take a moment and say, if you have not had a chance to check out the website, please do. servesyouRightPod.com. That's all one word with no punctuation. servesyouRightPod.com. You can find all of our past episodes, a way to get in touch with me, and so much more. All right, back to the podcast.
And so your proportion was growing, even though the value wasn't there at the moment.
Yeah, no, the balance was shrinking. Not a lot, but it was going down. But the number of shares was growing quite nicely. And so I knew when this thing recovers, man, it's going to recover wonderfully for me. And it absolutely did. It really did. Yeah, in a big way.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is a thing. I mean, it is such a powerful reminder because it is, I mean, I do understand why people react that way because, we're human beings and, we love gains, but oh my gosh, there's one thing we hate. We hate losses so much more than we love gains. And to see your hard-earned dollars ticking down, it does just kind of excite something irrational in you. It's like you're, back in the savannah days and you're seeing your food slowly deplete and you're like, there's something, I'm losing my things, I'm going to die, is how it feels. Even though logically we are in air-conditioned rooms with plenty of food and we're going to be safe, there's something very visceral about it that you don't like to see that. Even though logically you've thought through it and you're going to be okay, the line's going down.
But what I found is when you learn to look at the right stuff, everything's fine, because instead of looking at my balance, I was looking at my share numbers increase. Okay, my balance was kind of going down, but my share numbers. So there was logic in my brain saying, no, this is a good thing. I actually hope it goes down further. Matter of fact, the further it goes down, the better it is for me. Where everyone else thinks the opposite, and they're selling and they're panicking, that kind of thing, which is what I used to do. I'm not saying they're stupid. It's just
I mean, we all have it, and it kind of reminds me of if you get into running, everyone hates running, and even if you like it, you hate it to begin. Yeah. But if you do it enough and you actually kind of develop this feeling where it's like that burn, that resistance that people don't like, you actually kind of enjoy it because you get through that and you on the other side what is happening. And so you kind of get addicted to that, what other people experience as negative feeling. And you're like, no, that's why I'm here. That's what I'm doing. Yeah. So
Can I share with your listeners what really was the turnaround for me on this whole nightmare? It was when I was going through all this, I heard a true story that really was a light bulb moment for me. Scientists at the Max Planck Institute did an experiment. What they did is they placed people in the center of a dense German forest, and they told them to walk in a straight line to the edge. Now, these are all confident and capable people, but when the clouds covered the sun and they lost their point of reference, the GPS tracking they were wearing showed they were gradually starting to walk in circular motion. Some of them actually were ending up right back where they began, but each and every one of them was absolutely convinced they were walking in a perfectly straight line. Andrew, that is my life story for 40 years. Working hard, making good money, doing what I thought was right in investing, but literally walking in circles, going nowhere. Because every year my balance, my book was not going in the right direction. And so I said to myself at that moment, that's what I need, a compass, but not a metal compass like traveler's use. I need a one-page compass to give me that 30,000-foot view so I'm going in the right direction, because I don't have the runway anymore to go off on tangents and make all these crazy mistakes like I did for 40 years, because my runway is more like a helicopter pad than a runway. I can't afford that kind of stuff. And so that's what changed everything for me, and that's what gave me the confidence to understand once I got my compass organized, I knew what I was doing, and all the panic and stuff. I remember I love to watch in the morning for breakfast. I like to watch the financial news on cable. I never listened to them. I would never take their advice for anything, but they're just entertaining. I find them fun, and the stories are good about businesses. I remember one morning, the market was crashing. It's doom and gloom on TV. Get out of the market, everybody. It's forced sleep. And I'm laughing. I'm laughing as I'm listening to them. My wife walks in. She goes, honey, they're saying the market's crashing. We got money in the market. Why are you laughing? This is serious. I go, honey, they don't know what they're guessing. Their guess half the time is wrong. Who could predict 9/11? Who could predict COVID? These are things, they don't have a crystal ball. I love what Warren Buffett said. He says, forecasts tell you a lot about the forecast, sir, the person doing the forecast, but nothing about the market. And that is so true. Okay, they don't know, nobody knows. And if you have a consistent plan that stable and consistent, you can go through the good and the bad just fine. And that's really what changed my whole perspective on things.
For sure, yeah. And, I'm trying to remember, I think it was Rory Sutherland. He said, big data and forecasts all have one problem. They're all from the past. And, there's that idea, things that have never happened happen all the time. 9/11 is a prime example. Yeah. COVID. Yeah. Who would have predicted this, the whole market crash or the housing subprime issue?
2008.
Maybe the people actually doing it, but yeah. But yeah, things that we don't expect happen all the time. So yeah, every forecast, it's crazy. I was hoping, could we dig a little more? I do think that first principle is very powerful. Pay yourself first. And I remember The Richest Man in Babylon was, I think, where I first saw that when I was a kid. I think my dad gave me that book, and it's very simply put. But in that book, he says, a portion of everything you make belongs to you. I remember reading that and thinking, that makes sense. It's like I've never seen it or heard it said better. But what would you recommend to someone who maybe doesn't know if this week they're going to make 200, next week 2,000 because it's Christmas Eve? Do you think proportionality and saving that is always the best idea? Do you think someone who has variable income like that, maybe it's better to do a dollar amount just to make sure that they start? Where would you recommend someone start that even? Yeah.
Well, I'm not even sure they should start it, Andrew. Can I just tell you, I'm going to give this to all your listeners for free, so I'm not pitching nothing here or anything. But this is my actual one-page compass, okay? It's literally on one piece of paper. And what it is, because I want to answer your question using the compass, the 9 trail markers to financial freedom. There are some people, for example, my first one is career and income success, okay? All the books I read, they assumed you had a good job and made good money. Otherwise, why would you be reading investment books? That kind of thing. Well, that's not true. There's a lot of people who are underpaid, underappreciated, and underemployed. And that's the first step. And we got to get that together. And my first 2 chapters of the book are devoted to that.
Yeah, if you got 20 hours a week at Burger King and that's your job, you may not be able to save anything.
Exactly.
You just may not. Yeah.
We got an employment problem, and we got to solve that before we worry about the investing and all that kind of thing. But let's just say that, okay, that's somewhat, I don't mean you're making big money, but you're making good money, you're making decent money, whatever. Then step 3 is debt freedom, okay? I would say before you consider investing, if you're in credit card debt, if you're in consumer debt, student loan debt, if you're in car debt, get out of that first, because that's an instant return on your money. And people who talk about debt arbitrage and, oh no, I can make more money in the market so I don't mind debt. No, they don't take into account the risk factor on debt. And 2008 is a perfect example of that. I knew people that were leveraged up to their eyeballs. They were making great money and they could make all the payments perfectly and they were invested. But the problem is when everything crashed, the market crashed too. And so now they lost everything. I mean, literally everything, because all that calculation they did and the arbitrage they were doing didn't take risk into account. Well, we got to take risk into account, because so debt is more than just the interest payment you're paying. It's also the risk that you're exposing yourself to by having this over your head. And if you got transitioned to another job and there's a period you didn't have it, you could lose your car, you could lose so many things. So I'd say that is, before investing, I'd say that would be what I would want to do. I don't mean mortgage debt. That's different. That's a different kind of debt. But I'm saying consumer debt. Now we talk about wealth building. But I want to say one thing, because all the gurus did this. I didn't trust a single person. And even the famous gurus, I did the math on everything, and I questioned every one of their absolute things. So here's one of the absolute things a lot of the gurus say. Okay, when you get out of debt, the first thing you do, before you do anything else, is get a 3 to 6 month emergency fund. Now, I don't disagree with a 3 to 6 month emergency fund. I think it's a good thing. I call them a protection fund. I do them a little differently. But then they say, once you get that in place, Andrew, then start investing. Well, how long is it going to take the average person to get a 3 to 6 months emergency fund? That could take at least a year, maybe a little bit more than a year, okay? Because 3 to 6 months is a lot of time to. So anyways, so you're out of the market for a year. If you're 25 and you're out of the market for a year, and then you go to 65, that 1 year out of the market is about $500,000 you lost in accumulated compound interest and so and returns. And so I say the tweak in my approach is, do them at the same time. You just got debt free. You got cash flow going here for you. Before you raise your standard of living, let's get the protection fund and the investment going at the same time. Now you're not sitting out of the market for a whole year, and you can start investing right away. And little tweaks like that, I kept finding these little mistakes. $500,000 here, million here, a mistake, just a little thing that we're painless. There's no pain whatsoever in them. So I guess I would say, to answer your question, if you're out of debt, then I would start both the protection fund and the investment plan. A lot of people say 15%. Hey, I understand, some industries are less, consistent and that kind of thing. You may have to go to 12%. You may have to go to a little bit more protection fund in case things, your job situation changes.
Restaurant shuts down, or
Yeah, exactly. Or they don't pay their taxes and whatever.
It happens out there. It definitely happens. Yeah.
So, but I don't have. But this hard and fast rule, like everybody has to have this exact same thing. That's goofy. It's just wrong. It's just you got to adjust it somewhat here.
No, that makes a lot of sense, and I do really enjoy hearing that, because I do forget about that, and I kind of went through that period where it's like, with debt, you at least don't want things fighting against you. You do have to kind of just. And I think probably every person in the whole world learns this lesson at some point. That's why it's like we're all kids, and at one point, credit cards always seem like free money unless you had parents that really talked to you about it. And it's like, the bill is due. Interest is a thing. And now I actively have negative investments. And you got to learn that lesson at some point. But you got to get free there. And again, it doesn't work if you can't get free if you don't have a job that's not paying you at least something,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Decent. Yeah,
No,
I agree.
I think that's good. And, it's good to remember, too, that everyone is different. So there is never going to be one size fits all, because
I agree.
Like, I don't have kids. The next person who has the exact same job as me and who also has the exact same history but has two kids is necessarily going to be thinking about spending money on their kids differently. Like, it just always will be different. So
It will. I agree. And that's why the compass is very flexible with the 9 steps, okay? And different people are going to get through the steps quicker than others, and that's okay. It's not a race here. It's just it's something that just... Can I mention something, Andrew, about the biggest mistake, the financial mistake I think most people make, especially people who are fairly new at this whole thing, and that is tiny fees. I think tiny fees are like termites. You don't even notice them until all of a sudden your financial foundation crumbles. And let me explain what I'm talking about here, because this can save people tons of money, and it's so simple. Basically, let's just I'll give you an example. Say you got two people, A and B. Let's say they're both 25, starting out in life. They both decide to put a modest $25 a week away. Now, there's a flat number, okay? This might be good for people like in hospitality, okay? It's a relatively small number, and it's consistent, and it's a dollar amount.
It's like $5 each shift sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Something like that. Okay.
Easily doable. Yeah.
Easy, okay. And so they both do that. Person A chooses to go into a low-cost index fund, like I was saying, with a 0.03% annual management fee. Person B goes to an advisor who charges a full 1%, which is very standard, and they puts him in an active fund with a 5.75 upfront load and a 0.66% ongoing management fee, which is also quite common. Okay, now let's fast forward for 40 years. Now they're 65. Okay, person A has a $1 million portfolio based on historical market returns. Person B has a $570,000 portfolio. Same exact contributions, Andrew, same exact market returns. The only difference was the fees. Quietly eating away close to half, not quite half, but close to half of that person's investment. Okay, and here's the thing about it. We assume they never got a raise. If we factor in normal raises, that $430,000 difference that the person B lost basically could even be a bigger number, closer to $1 million. And here's the saddest thing about it. Person B probably feels like he got great service. He liked his advisor. He knew his kids' names. They went golfing a couple times together. Little did he realize he did the equivalent of funding someone else's retirement with half of his own money. And I am not against advisors, Andrew, but I am against products that enrich Wall Street at the expense of their client's portfolio. And I'll be the first to admit, and I'm embarrassed to say this, for 40 years I never questioned fees. I just assumed those are the rules of the game, and that's what everyone has to pay. Once I made my compass, I realized something. The rules we don't question can cost us the most. In person B's case, it cost him $430,000. That is just too much, especially for an average income person.
Yeah, and I mean, that is part of the problem with that sort of structure, too. 1% doesn't sound like a big number. And it is a brilliant setup for a business. It is good to remember that it is a business, and they do have a product they're selling, and you pay a price for it,
Exactly. And Wall Street, they love complexity. They want you to think, oh, you need me. You need us to interpret all this Wall Street stuff. Or, I tell you, here's the real truth about it, Andrew. Simplicity is for winners. Complexity is for victims. And Wall Street has a lot of victims who are paying huge money, and they don't even realize this money's being siphoned out of their investments. They don't even realize it because they've worked it out so it's so seamless. You never write a check to them. It just kind of magically siphons out of their account without really anybody knowing much.
And I mean, that is actually a great point too. Something I was going to bring up. One of the best pieces of advice that I've ever gotten, and it's served me very well. I'm assuming you probably have something very similar on your roadmap there, but it's if you automate saving and investing and you add friction to spending, it'll always serve you. Like, make yourself go in, pull out the credit card, into the credit card for every Amazon purchase. You will save money. Like, make yourself do that. But the second that the paycheck hits, have the money transfer out. And like, that's what I do. Yeah. And I don't have to think about it. It just makes it easy. And it's automatic, you know?
Yep. No, that's a wonderful idea. And can I also mention too, I know there's some of your listeners who are thinking right now, oh, come on, investing, David, if I made the kind of money you made, or if I made the kind of money Andrew made, maybe I could do this. But I'm living paycheck to paycheck, buddy. I don't really have any money left over for investing. That's a rich man's game or something. I'm not that person. Let me tell you where that's a lie. And it kind of goes with something you said, Andrew, earlier in the show. The average NBA player makes over $10 million a year. I didn't say in his career, I said in a year. Yet after 5 years of retirement, 60% of them are broke, according to the Netflix documentary Broke, and the NFL is even worse. Okay, after only 2 years of retirement, 78% of them are either bankrupt or in serious financial stress. That's according to Sports Illustrated. Now let's compare that to Dale Schroeder, a basketball-loving carpenter who made an average to below average income his entire career, but he chose to live on less than he earned and invest the difference wisely. He ended up with a $3 million portfolio. That's more than most of the NBA and most of the NFL players end up at the end with them. And yet this guy was making extremely modest income. What I learned from that, and what I learned from when I made my compass, was making money is very different than building wealth. Those pro athletes, they were masters at making money. I mean, they were the elite in their profession, in their game, and they commanded amazing money. But most of them, not all of them, but most of them were very bad at building wealth, or terrible at it. But Dale Schroeder, let's face it, he was not very good at making money. I mean, a nice guy probably, but he was a master at building wealth. And that is the difference. I was very good at making money for 40 years. I was terrible at building wealth. Once I figured this out, I accomplished more in 6 years in building wealth they did in the previous 40 years. And it's like I say, it's a different skill set.
I think it's important that we add in there that, you know, it's not just professional sports players, because I can hear people thinking that, like, we have a continual experiment running throughout the U.S. and a lot of the world that happens all the time, the lottery. You know, truly randomly chosen people without skills of building wealth, and you see it play out over and over again. I don't think there's ever a lottery winner that doesn't go broke. You almost think like the influx of money without the skills to keep it and grow it is almost a curse, and like most of them end up less happy in the long run because they've upped their life and they haven't upped their income. And it's like, well, there you go.
Can I tell you, I did a very, very informal, very, very non-scientific study on that whole thing. And let me just share with you what I found, because there's real facts to prove this. If their life was a mess before they won the lottery, I'm talking financially, I don't mean other areas of their life, but if they just had a mess financially and they were whatever, and they won the lottery, you're right. Within a number of years, not that many years either, they're back to where they were, square zero, okay? But if somebody wins a lottery and they were disciplined before the lottery and they had their money and they were building wealth, things like that, the lottery isn't a curse for them. It was quite, because they understood and knew how to invest it and knew how to build wealth. So getting money, if you don't earn it and you don't have the discipline to grow it, getting money doesn't do anything for you. It'll go through your hands as quickly as I studied a guy. He won $29 million, and with 5 years, he was living in the shed that he had rented to store all the stuff that he bought. It was pretty sad.
Well, it's like a promotion, say. Promotions are neither good or bad. If you are a great worker and you get a promotion, you will probably do more great work in a more impactful way. And if you suck at your job and you're terrible and you get a promotion, you will just suck more. And it is based on the person. It's kind of, wealth numbers, they're all kind of agnostic. They depend on the person, and they just sort of amplify what's underlying.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you there. I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very true.
So if I were to want to start today and I wanted to clean up my act, how would you recommend I get going,
Okay. First thing I'd recommend going, and this is not self-serving because it's free. I'm not pitching nothing here. I have nothing to sell, by the way. Okay, you can get my book on Amazon, but that's it. But I would literally go to onepagewealthcompass.com/free, and I would download this. It's very powerful. I mean, this took me well over a year and 21 books and 13 podcasts to develop. But basically, if I was starting fresh right now, I would find out where I am on the 9 trail markers, okay? And different people are going to be at different points. And I would start where you're at. And don't worry about, I need to be further along, I'm older or I'm younger or whatever it is. No, it doesn't matter where you are. Just start where you're at. Now, some people, let's talk about the debt freedom one. Say they say, well, David, this is nice that you say debt freedom here, and you have a couple sentences after, but that's not telling me how to get out of debt. I mean, can you give me more specifics? Well, if you notice, it says, see chapter 4. And basically, if you just go to the book and go to chapter 4, it gives you the step-by-step plans. And there's different plans for different people and different levels of debt that they can do, and basically to painlessly get out of debt. So this is like the 30,000-foot view. It's giving you the executive summary, and this is the ground game. Take a right at the light, take a left at the stop sign. And when you bring these together, you've got a powerful tool. And what I do, Andrew, just so you know how I bring them together, is every week I put on my calendar on Fridays afternoons, I put on a 2-minute wealth checkup. And what I do is I take my compass out, see where I'm at, see where I want to go, and what would my next step would be. And I look at my North Star principles. These are more the big picture principles that keep us out of trouble. They're kind of like the guardrails, mental guardrails, to keep us out of the ditch. And I remember once I had a 2-minute meeting with myself, and I realized I made an impulse purchase earlier that week. And the rule on the thing is, no, you got to wait 24 hours before you make an impulse purchase, because half the time after 24 hours you realize, I don't really need that. Well, I caught myself really soon, like that Friday, I caught myself. So guess what happened the next week? I didn't make an impulse purchase, and the next week. Whereas if I wasn't checking up myself, I could have made an impulse purchase, and then 6 years later, all of a sudden, 10 grand of impulse purchases. So have you ever read a book and you thought you got a really good idea, and you says, man, that's going to change my life. And then 2 years later, you run across an idea and you go, oh yeah, I kind of forgot about that. Well, when you're having a 2-minute meeting with yourself every week, you can't do that, because it's like I'm still on the same step for 3 weeks and I'm not even doing nothing. It's kind of like a behavior modification that is quiet between you and yourself, but it keeps you on that right path. Because like I said, I got off track real easy for 40 years, and this really helped me stay focused like a laser beam.
Sorry to interrupt. We will get right back to the show, but I did want to say, if you have not had a chance to subscribe to the show, please do. It'd mean the world to me, and it does help us get cooler and more interesting guests. That's it. Right back to David and Andrew.
Well, that's good, because I always feel like overly like, man, is this of any value? Whenever I talk about anything like this, fitness, money, because the truth is, the answer is very simple. The problem is that simple is not easy, because we are human beings who forget things, and the knowing and doing gap is real. Like, I know that I shouldn't eat ice cream, but tell me that Friday at 9 p.m. and hey, it's coming. I know that I should put away some money, because the future will come and I will want that money when I'm older. But it's fun to buy things, and if you don't have these guardrails, I think that a lot of life really does boil down to compliance. How compliant are you with the program you set? And so I like the idea of a repeating reminder, because 2 minutes doesn't sound scary. This isn't a weekly 4-hour deep dive into your finances. It's like, did you buy something? Oh, okay. Yeah.
Now, I will tell you something, Andrew. Sometimes those 2-minute meetings, when I'm kind of stuck at something for a couple weeks, I'll say, well, I'm going to go to chapter 6 here and just take a quick look at it. And I may spend a half hour, but it wasn't because I had to. It's because I wanted to do that little bit deeper dive. But the next week, it's 2 minutes again. So most of the time, it's 2 minutes, but but you're diving into something a little deeper because you realize there's a need here, and you put the time aside and you're gonna do it. So it's very flexible, very flexible. But when you need to spend a little bit more time, it just kind of naturally happens. When you don't need to, hey, it's just a quick reminder, and I'm off to whatever I'm doing next, that kind of thing. So
cool. Would you be willing to share the North Stars with us?
The 5 North Star principles, sure, absolutely. And again, I want everyone to download those for free, but I'll give them.
Yeah, we'll have a link on the show notes, so don't worry if you didn't write that down.
But yeah, okay. The first one is live on less than you earn, and that's like the athletes we're talking about. That's like you and I were talking about. If you don't get that one right, that's why it's first on the North Star. You might as well forget it. I mean, you're not gonna. You can read 1 million books. You can get a PhD in personal finance if there's such a thing, but you're not gonna get anywhere, because this is like, even if you make $10 million a year, if you spend $11 million a year, yours not any better than the guy on minimum wage trying to just survive.
Are you familiar with Michael Ruhlman? He's
not really.
One of the most famous chef / authors. So he writes about chefs. He worked with Thomas Keller. He wrote all of his cookbooks. But he has this diatribe he does against people who don't like fat because they're afraid it gets them fat. And I always think about that. He's just like, no, fat does not make you fat. Eating more calories than you burn makes you fat. Fat is good for you, but it's only good for you in moderation, like everything in life. It just reminds me, it's like, no, spending money doesn't make you broke. Spending more than you make does. Exactly. There's always this level to it. Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't progress. I don't tell people they should live like a monk. I mean, for the 6 years when we were building, we did not live like a monk. We didn't live extravagantly, no. But we had our date nights. We still had fun things to do. We just did them more economically. But once we got out of that, then we did raise our standards and living and stuff like that. But that's, okay. The second one is debt freedom. And here's why I have that number 2. Because if you're in consumer debt, you are violating number 1. Because you can't live on less than you earn and go into debt. It's not mathematically possible. So this is like the math. If you're delusional and think, I live on less than I earn, but your credit card debt keeps going up. Well, no, you're not living on less than you earn. You're living on more than you earn. That's why you have the credit card debt going up. So that was really important to have. I believe is number 2. The third one is 3D investment success. And I'll just tell you what the 3 Ds are. One is gain knowledge. Benjamin Franklin said the best investment is knowledge. Once I got the knowledge, Andrew, the market was not scary anymore. Wall Street was not scary anymore. The guys on TV trying to scare me weren't scary anymore. It's just amazing how the knowledge just brings peace about yourself. Okay. The dimension 2 is simplify the strategy. Like I told you, 5 minutes a month, not a week, a month. Now, if you get paid every week, maybe 5 minutes. But if you're on a standard pay, here's a nice thing. And I know most of your people aren't probably, but if you're on a standard pay, you can automate this and have the exact same go out of your account. Then you're spending no time a month. Okay. My pay is flexible, so I can't do that, but other people can. Okay. And the third dimension is invest consistently. Once you get out of debt, you can't say, okay, this month I'm not going to invest, because no, you got it. That's paying yourself first. You take that off. Warren Buffett, people say, there was a quote he had about some people, what is that quote about? Some people say, I forget, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have said it because I forget. But basically his point was, don't spend and then invest what's left over. Invest, then spend what's left over. Okay, in other words, take that money first and then whatever's left over. Because some people say, well, there's nothing left over at the end of the month, so I can't invest. Well, that's because you didn't do it. You did it at the end of the month. You need to do it at the beginning of the month when you first get paid. Then there's no left to go. Okay. The fourth one is simplify it and forget it. Again, Wall Street wants it complicated. It doesn't. It doesn't have to be complicated at all. It's very simple. And then the last one is verify before you trust. This is a big one, because there are so many forces out there in the world of finance with conflicts, and they aren't in your favor. They're in their favor. And they are TV commercials, salespeople. And I'm not against TV commercials, salespeople, but I'm just saying when it comes to money, this is why so many people just say, I can't get ahead. I tried the investing thing. It doesn't work. I just don't have, it's not, that's because you got to watch who you trust. I have in my book the 3 C's of conflicts. If you like, I can just briefly share it with you, because this is something everybody should know no matter what. The first C is conflict of interest. This is when someone's paycheck influences greatly their advice they give you. And so, like, for example, somebody's selling insurance. They want to sell the whole life insurance because commissions on that is huge, where the cheap term insurance, which is really that pure insurance, they don't like selling that because they don't make as much money on it. Or a student loan advisor, his goal is to get you into debt. He's not a mean person. He has to make a living too. But I mean, there are stories I have in my book. People who are in their 60s and 70s and even 80s still in student loan debt from decisions they made when they were 18 years old. And you know what's crazy now? They are actually getting it deducted from their Social Security check. They're still paying for that. And not half of them, but a big portion of them never graduated from college. So it's like buying a car, getting the payment book, but not getting the car to go with it. It's like, well, I never got my degree, but I'm paying for it still. So it's crazy. So that's the first step, conflict of interest. The second one is conflict of information gap. And let me give you a non-financial one, because this applies to anything. When I was in my 50s, I took a physical exam, and they gave me a blood test, and the doctor said, David, your cholesterol is like 230, which is very high. Anything over 200 is bad. And he goes, we got to get you on statins right away, or you could be in serious trouble. And I go, okay, but let me do some research first. He goes, no, you don't do any research. Let me tell you, my dad, he died of high cholesterol, of a stroke because of high cholesterol. And if we had statins back then, and he almost cried in his office. And I said, okay, that's a very touching story, but I got to do my research. He was not mad, but I left. I dove into the research. I found out that lifestyle, how you eat, how you exercise, how you move, is a big deal. Yeah, and so I did a 180-degree turn. After 90 days of that transformation, I went back to him, took another blood test. My cholesterol went from 230 to 175. Anything under 200 is really good, I was just like, I couldn't believe how good it was. I went back to tell him, I want to explain to him what I did. He didn't want to hear it, Andrew. He says, no, you need to be on statins. That's a fad you're on. Well, I am now 72, and my cholesterol is now 165, so it's even a lower. So some fad that was. But the point is, I'm not saying he was dishonest or anything, but maybe that's all you learn in medical school. The only solution is drugs or a scalpel. I don't know what they learned, but I'm not going to give someone else charge of my health. That's not going to happen. I'm the CEO. I'll listen to their input, but I'm going to do my own research on this because I'm 72. I don't have a single prescription drug I take, but yet a lot of 72 people have a whole medicine cabinet. One drug has side effects, so you need another drug for that one, another one, and then it just explodes, and I'm trying to stay off of it. So anyways, that's conflict of information gap. I'm going to assume he didn't know. He wasn't trying to hurt me. He didn't know. What he taught in medical school and what was out there in the general public, he didn't understand. The last one, this is the most serious one of all of them, Andrew. It's conflict of responsibility. This is when everyone assumes everyone else did the research. I knew a guy who, he was an investment person, and he was a decent person, and he got this amazing investment. He said it was really, and he really believed in it passionately, and he got people in his church involved in it who were fairly well-to-do because they trusted him. They'd known him for years, and they all invested in it, and it was a guaranteed return. It was very safe, blah, blah, blah. And then what happens, one day he finds out the guy who offered the investment that he got it from skipped the country with the money, and everybody lost everything. The people were furious. First, they were shocked. Then they were mad at him, and they said, you're going to hear from my lawyer. You're supposed to look out for us. Well, here's the conflict of responsibility gap. The people who had the money to invest, they assumed this guy did the research, and he didn't. The guy who sold it to him, he assumed the guy who offered it to him did the research. Well, he did the research all right, but it was the wrong kind of research, okay? And so
how do Ponzi schemes work? Okay, got it.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. That's research he did. And so everybody assumed everybody else did the research. Here's one thing I know, and it's a really big important part of my compass, is nobody cares more about your money than you do. Nobody. I don't care what the salesman tells you. They're going to sleep well at night 10 years later when you don't have any of that money anymore, and you're like, what happened? So you got to take some responsibility here and do a little bit of research on your own.
Yeah, and it's a reminder, and it's a reminder I've heard in different ways at different times throughout my whole life that no one is coming to save you. You've got to do it. And
yep. Totally agree.
It is a thing.
And I tell you, when I went unemployed, when I was fired, and I was going through some really dark times just trying to figure it out. One day I woke up and I says, you're right, no one's coming to save me. If I have to pull myself up and do this myself, because if I don't do it, I'm going to crawl in a corner and whatever, and just go away. And so I wasn't going to let that happen. And that's why I said, I'm going to fight. And that's fight with information and fight with blood, sweat, and tears of trying to build a company.
Awesome. Well, for someone who's listening at home, where would you like them to go and find out more about you and what you do?
Absolutely. Go to onepagewealthcompass.com. The first thing you'll see is an opportunity to get the free download of the One Page Compass. You'll also get emails, newsletters. You'll get tips and things like that to help you along the way, kind of virtual coaching. I have a blog there. I have other free things. There's a way to get a hold of me if you have a question or something like that you want to ask me. And the only thing, I'm really not selling anything except there's a link to a paperback book on Amazon or an ebook if you want. Extremely inexpensive. It goes really good with the one-page compass because when you bring them together, it's like you get the big picture and the more detailed information. And that's about it. I really have nothing else. I'm on some social media, but I'm just starting to grow that a little bit now. But that's onepagewealthcompass.com.
Yeah, just looking to see a couple people save a little bit more and make a little more to avoid the shock that you had to go through, huh?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Is there anything you wish we would have covered or anything we missed? Something that you'd be remiss if we didn't talk about before we end?
Yeah, just one last thing. And I'd just like to say this because this is something that was another light bulb moment after the compass was developed is this clear direction beats misdirected speed every time. For 40 years, I had misdirected speed. I was spinning my wheels, making good money, going all directions. Once I got that clear direction, like I said earlier, I accomplished more in 6 years in terms of building my wealth than I did in the previous 4 years. And that's what I'm hoping the one-page compass will do for you because it did it for me. I did not make this to be an author. I made this for myself. This was a private thing I made for myself. But once I got out of that dark storm, I says it would be the ultimate in selfishness not to share this with people. So that's all I'm doing here is sharing and hoping someone else can avoid that nightmare at 63 that I had to go through.
Awesome. Yeah, I like that. And I like that image, I'm picturing someone with like a footstep in every direction, more or less stays the same, but if you walk 100 feet, 100 steps straight, you actually go somewhere, so yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Well, David, thanks for coming on and sharing a little with us about how to make some money and keep it.
Thanks, Andrew. I enjoyed it. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for listening. That is today's episode. Now, if you have not taken a moment to check out our website, please do. It's servesyouRightPod.com. We have past episodes and all sorts of other things there. If you want to get in touch with me, that's the place to do it. I do appreciate that you've given me your most valuable asset, your time and attention. So thank you for listening and stay tuned. We have some really cool guests coming up. I would hate it if you missed it. Cheers.